Do you think that this makes people happier? Has it been observed that this is a happier result?
That's a good question.
Traditional gender roles have become a very tricky issue, very touchy one. There's this one short clip with Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson discussing whether traditional gender roles is something that we should look closely upon, and maybe there's some truth to it, recognizing the differences between men and women. So I thought I would chime in and give my viewpoints on the subject. Let's see what we got here.
Do you think that the Scandinavian model that has revealed that when you do make things more equal, you will find that people generally tend to gravitate more towards traditional gender roles? Do you think that this makes people happier? Has it been observed that this is a happier result?
That's a good question. The indices of life satisfaction are pretty high in Scandinavia, but I don't know if anybody has done an analysis that would indicate whether the sexual sorting is a contributor to that.
So the issue with this topic is that whenever we talk about egalitarian systems, whenever we talk about equality, we always mean one thing, simultaneously disregarding the other part of the same coin, because there are two parties discussing two different things. Progressives are talking about equality, which refers to equality of outcome, meaning that your background, sexuality, orientation, religious belief, status, and other attributes that you identify with should be a hindrance for your wishes and aspirations. The other part is for equality of opportunities, which Jordan Peterson has talked about numerous times, and it's about you having the same opportunities regardless of the same attributes that I've mentioned before. But that doesn't say that you will reach the same result that everybody else will, or that you will have the same path for reaching the same results. The one suggests that everybody, regardless of their personal attributes, should start at the same starting point. The second one suggests there's no chance in hell that you will start at the same starting point, but you will be given the same tools and opportunities for reaching those destinations. In that sense, equality is a vague expression, and you should be very careful what you're talking about. It's very easy to misinterpret and skew the direction of the discussion.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the general idea has been that the Scandinavians are happier because their societies are more egalitarian. But they're not more egalitarian in the sense that men and women are also more different. So
men and women are more different, but the opportunities are more egalitarian.
Yeah. And then the societies are more satisfied. But it's tough because there's other variables, because the Scandinavian countries are relatively homogenous.
That's about to change, and in a very, very near future. This applies more to Japan, but Scandinavian countries, I don't think so. Not for long.
Right, and more homogenous societies tend to be more peaceful and happier. Not more diverse societies. And they're also small countries, so they're somewhat easier to govern.
Right.
And they tend to be wealthy. So it'd be hard to parse out all those contributors, right, to figure out what it is that's making the Scandinavians relatively content.
So it's almost like a super tribe versus a country.
Yeah, right. Well, and those sorts of societies, in some sense, are easier to manage.
I agree with that notion, because the smaller the country, the smaller the tribe, it's easier to get a hold of what people are doing and how they're behaving and policing them and stuff like that. I mean, not excessive policing, but you get my point. Which I have talked about in previous videos, how globalization is inevitable and the means of controlling people will get harsher and more sophisticated. There's no other way of keeping a huge world population in check. And this is not me panicking, it's just that we are going towards more globalized and controlled future, but at the same time more secure and safer.
So, is there any benefit to this model that we could perhaps bring to the United States or to Canada and maybe mitigate some of the issues that we have between the right and the left? Like maybe there's some sort of a compromise that'll lead to a less debate and dispute.
Well, I think that you guys in the States are doing real well, actually, personally. I mean, you know, your system of checks and balances seems to work out pretty well. There's a fair bit of, let's say, left domination right now of the mainstream media. I think that's a reasonable claim, and also of academia and of the intelligentsia. But the political system is skewed pretty hard to the Republican end of things at the moment. And so that's not a bad balance. And then in the last election, I mean, maybe you could make a case, perhaps, that things had tilted a little too far to the Republican side, but that got balanced out because the Democrats took the House again. And it seems like they were more moderate Democrats. That seems to be the scuttlebutt. So it isn't obvious to me that your system isn't functioning well. I think that one of the things that's happening.
This is pretty much how it looks like in Scandinavia and many other countries. In Western Europe, media is dominated by progressives, whereas the economical progression has a more capitalistic nature.
That's making things look more contentious than they are is that the mainstream media is under such assault by the up-and-coming media forms, including people like you, that as their financial models deteriorate, and as their journalistic standards take a hit, and as they lose their fact checkers and their time to be careful with the stories, they concentrate more on exaggerating the extremes to attract attention. And so, there was an article published in the Atlantic Monthly about a month ago showing that, and it depends on how you calculate these things, but that the radical leftists and the radical right-wingers are only about 5% of the population on each side. And that the vast majority of Americans consider themselves something approximating the relatively silent majority. And so
this kind of a picture is prevalent all over the world. And the paradox is that the minority, being extremes, are still the loudest part of the population. Being so highly vocal, they paint the agenda, making the majority to believe that that's the reality. This is why fear-mongering is very dangerous, because as of now we have more secure and safer lifestyle than ever before, but people still come up with different conspiracy theories about how we're going to be enslaved by the rich ones, and how the government will know every step that we take, and that somehow will affect the life of an average Joe.
I don't think that things are polarized as badly as they seem. And it is also the case right now that if you poll people and ask them about the conditions of their life in the United States, they tend to say that they're doing quite well, but that other people aren't. And so I think maybe, I don't know this for sure, but I think maybe that the technological pressure that's being put on the mainstream media is driving extreme political views as a means of gathering the attention of a shrinking market share.
Listen, people will do whatever it takes to survive. And if it takes to publish some clickbaity articles in order to get in some investment and finances, then people will do it. There's no such thing as integrity when you have children at home waiting for food on a table. But as usual, there's no such thing as bad or good. All the things that we have at hand, all the tools that we create are just that. They are tools. And it's up to you, to me, to use them with consciousness. I mean, this is a genius invention. You have all the information at hand. You can set up plans. You can reach your friends, your family without traveling in beforehand. You can find some places, guidance, translations. But when the ego gets out of hand, you are bored, you want some attention or entertainment, you lose yourself in the technology. But that, my friend, is on you.
That's a very interesting take on it. I wonder how detrimental that is to us as a whole, because we are constantly dealing with this clickbait nonsense headline, and everything is a dispute, everything's a war.
Yeah. Well, it's nerve-wracking.
Yes.
I noticed this years ago because I really stopped watching the news 25 years ago, although I've been heavily involved in it the last 2 years.
Great advice. I haven't been watching television myself for 5-6 years or something like that. It's worthless, mainly to trigger you, to make you to buy stuff, to consume a lot of dumb media about nothing and sedate you into misery. At least with social media, you can choose whatever you want to watch.
Because I noticed that most of what passed for news wasn't. Because my sense was, well, if it isn't important in a month, if it isn't important a month from now, it was never important. And almost everything that's news is like important right now.
Yeah.
And so I tried to stay away from that. It was better for my peace of mind. And I often recommended to my clinical clients who were depressed and anxious that they shield themselves from the news as much as possible. But now the news is everywhere, right? It's everywhere. It's Twitter, it's Facebook, it's YouTube. It's like we're just inundated by it. It's like CNN on steroids. It's 24-hour news cycle, and it's produced by everyone, whether they're informed or not, and it's really high emotion, and I think that is making things look a lot worse to us than they actually are.
Exactly that. They trigger your emotions, because when you're emotional, it's easier to sell you stuff or to control you, to make you do things that you don't want to. Remember, it's highly dangerous to make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. And listen, going back to these traditional gender roles, I talk a lot about gender dynamics and how there are specific energies between masculinity and femininity, and it's a spectrum, it's not a binary thing. The attraction is based on those concepts, but it doesn't mean that we aren't evolving and going past that. What I'm trying to say, I'm not for left or right. I am for what works, and I am for observing and adapting. I always try to be as objective as possible, trying to see nuances and not cling on a certain type of information. The most important thing is to try out stuff that you learn in your own life without backing, without practice. No theory holds ground. I am for traditional feminine and masculine stereotypes, but that doesn't mean that I don't see the progression of humanity. We might as well in the future become these androids, faceless and genderless. I don't know. I can't predict the future. It's a possibility. But as of now, whatever works. Of course, you would like to watch more videos on gender dynamics. There are a bunch of them. Click, watch, like, subscribe, share. But for now, Hussein out.